Hey, my name is Grace, and I saw a video the other day from my favorite booktuber, Allison Pages, and she basically did a video going through all of her physical TBR. I zoned out right in the middle of talking. Showed us all of the books on her TBR, brief synopsis. It's a video, you get it. So I wanted to do the same thing. So I have two shelves and a little bit extra of my physical TBR. So these are books that I've accumulated over the past, let's see, when did I started reading again? February of 2021. So since that time, 99% of these books have been added to my personal library, and I want to go through them. So here we go. Tomorrow is the first day of fall, but it's been fall in this house for quite some time. So I've got cup of tea. This is going to be a longer one, so get yourself something cozy and delicious. And yeah, let's go through the books that I'm waiting to read. Okay, first is the book that I'm going to read as soon as I'm done with my Kindle Unlimited Romance tear that I'm going through right now, and that is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. I did finally get it in the mail, not in time for my vacation, if you have been a viewer, but that's okay. So once I get the time, I'm gonna read The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. In no particular order, I kind of tried to have them like a rainbow. So I have City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I don't know a whole lot about it. I know that it is a high fantasy, which I have kind of come to realize I'm not super into, set in Cairo. And yeah, I've heard really good things about it, so I wanted to pick it up. I have North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. Kind of, am I like too far away? Elizabeth Gaskell by Elizabeth Gaskell. North and South. Okay, North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. Country girl moves to the city during England's Industrial Revolution, and there's a handsome, cranky man. The Watchmaker of Filigree Street, another fantasy set in 1883 in London, I believe. I started this and couldn't get into it, but I am willing to give it another shot. I think it's kind of like steampunky vibes. This was recommended to me by the Storygraph, so I am curious to see if I really will end up enjoying it, just to see how their recommendation machine works. Wow. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I kind of got this last summer. I was like, oh, I'm gonna read every Pride and Prejudice adaptation ever and rank them. Narrator voice, she did not do that. I ended up just buying a whole bunch of them, and then I was like, oh, I'd rather just read Pride and Prejudice. There will probably be a couple that fall into this category. I might try and read this for spooky season. That's really the only time I see myself reading this. So if I don't read it this year, I'll probably just end up giving it away or trying to sell it. Speaking of spooky season, this is on my fall TBR. Maybe this will be a partially fall TBR video, but I was gonna say season 2 of Twilight. What is wrong with me? New Moon, which is the second Twilight book, slaps. I remember liking this one a lot, and I remember almost being Team Jacob after this. So I really enjoyed reading the first book, and so I want to read the second one. An Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. This is a nonfiction that I picked up sometime last year. It's been sitting on my shelf for quite a while. Okay, we lost some, but we're gonna get it back. Okay, next I have Mythology by Edith Hamilton, the classic bestseller. That's not part of the title. Timeless Tales of Gods and Heroes. That is part of the title. It's basically a book about Greek mythology. I love Greek mythology. One of my favorite books is Mythos by Stephen Fry, and he cites this one a lot. So Hamlet, the autobiography of Malcolm X. I think I read this a little bit in college, but I haven't read it all the way through, and I definitely want to at some point, obviously I want to read all of these. They're on my TBR. Okay. All right. Next I have In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Set in 1959. This is a nonfiction. I really thought it was a fictional work. It's kind of like the original true crime novel, but it's not a novel, it's nonfiction. Trick Mirror by Gio Tolentino. This feels like a summer read to me, so I don't know how soon I'll be able to get to it, but it's a bunch of essays basically about like the internet And I've heard kind of so-so things about it, but some people really, really enjoy it. So I think there's a chance that I might. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I definitely want to read Toni Morrison, but I also think that a lot of her works are quite heavy and I am fragile. So I will get around to reading this one day. Just don't know when. Dubliners by James Joyce. I honestly don't know if I'll ever read this. I read Ulysses last year and I did not like it, but this is shorter and I'm thinking maybe it'll give me more of like cozy Ireland vibes. I'm guessing based on the title that it's a bunch of like vignettes or short stories about people around Dublin. One of the prettiest books I own, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Is this a book I'm ever gonna read? Realistically, is this a book I'm ever gonna read? I don't know, but I love having it on my shelf. Americonda by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is a book, I got it secondhand. I did not know when I bought it that this author is kind of problematic, but I've heard that this book is incredible and I've heard a lot of praise for the book. I've heard a lot of criticism for the author. So thankfully when I bought it, the author didn't like get anything from that purchase. And so since I already have it, I am keen to read it and kind of make up my mind for myself. Okay, next we have A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. My impression of this is that it is a happier little life. It's kind of like a coming of age story set in New York. I think it follows like a woman or a cast of characters. I don't know. The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I really liked East of Eden, so I thought, why not? At the Dark End of the Street, Black Women, Rape, and Resistance, A New History of the Civil Rights Movement from Rosa Parks to the Rise of Black Power. Another nonfiction that I have had this one for quite a while. It's about time I get around to it. Really trying to resist my own white feminism and do some more anti-racist education. So Sourdough, or Lois and Her Adventures in the Underground Market. From what if I'm remembering correctly, it's about a lady that gets a sourdough starter and that changes her life. I think I'm getting like gentle mundanity from this one. Atomic Habits. I know Alexandria Ang read this and it was really, really impactful to her. I'm not super hyped to read it, but I do want to keep it because who knows? It's the thing, your tastes change all the time. Here we have a book that I read in high school that my mom recently gifted to me, City of Jinns. It's all about New Delhi, India, which is where I partially grew up and lived in and graduated high school there. And it's all about this city and basically like the different iterations and lifetimes the city has gone through. Again, I read it in high school, which was at least 10 years ago at this point, so I don't remember too much about it, but I do want to read it again. Obviously, I want to read it again, Grace. I own them. They're all books I own because I want to read them. Here's a little honey I got from Half Price Books for $3.48. I am curious if this is actually all of the book. This is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Yeah, that text is pretty, yeah, okay. Again, this was a movie I really liked a lot growing up as a kid, and it's a classic that I really wanted to read. So here's a collection of poems. I really have no excuse for, like, I could read this very easily and very quickly. Collection of poems by Padraig O'Tuma. That is he's an Irish poet, and I'm sure that I have mispronounced his name. The Vanishing Half, nope, no. The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox by Maggie O'Farrell. You guys know I'm a Maggie O'Farrell stan, and so I wanted to read her backlist. I don't like this cover. I'll say it right now. Don't like this cover at all, but we can't always get what we want. Thomas by Bisham Sani. This is Smithy helped me discover this book because she does a Lit with Indian Lit challenge, and I, on top of just like wanting to diversify my reading and read more translated works, like I said, I've spent a significant amount of time in India growing up, and so I want to really honor that by reading more Indian literature and Indian stories. So, and then we've got another little classic I got from Half Price Books, Little Women. I know a while about the cover, but I got it for a good price, and if I end up really liking it, I'm sure I'll get like the Penguin Clothbound Classic. But this is another classic that I really want to read this fall. It feels like a cozy fall, like November read, so hopefully that happens. Here we have The Matchmaker by Elin Hildebrand. I'll be honest, this was a gift from one of my best friends, It's a little out of my comfort zone. I wouldn't typically pick up this book, but it is she said it's like her favorite book and her favorite author. So I do want to read it. I should have read it over the summer because it just looks like a summer read to me. So I might have to wait till next spring or summer, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Then we have, okay. Then we have A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. This is translated from French, I believe, which is kind of cool. It is a high fantasy. So I don't know, we'll have to see. I've heard kind of mixed things. People either really love it. Obviously this cover is like amazing. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know. When it's high fantasy, I'm like, I mean, what do you need to know in the synopsis? It's another world. There's magical powers. Okay, The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels. This is, by India Holton. This is a romance, historical fantasy romance that, again, I mean, it's a cover by. I think this cover's pretty sick. I've read a little bit of it and it was fun, but it just wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right time. And so I'm gonna wait for the right time. And that's my message to you today, my friend. You don't have to read that. You can start the book. You can put it back on your shelf, okay? Unless it's a library book, there's no timeline. You can just put it back on the shelf, pick it up when you feel like it. Might be a couple months from now, might be a couple years from now. No pressure, no pressure. I got The Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. This was shortlisted for the Women's Prize, and I've heard like Grace talk about it. And I just heard really, really good things about it. I love historical fiction. This is about a lady that circumnavigates the globe. And then in the future, like in her future, our present day, I think somebody starring as her in a film and kind of the two timelines. So really, I am excited to read this one a lot. Song of Solomon, another Toni Morrison. I have heard a lot of people say this one is their favorite. So we'll see. They can't kill us till they kill us. You might be saying to yourself, huh, Grace, didn't you say we're gonna read that for the Summer Splash Readathon? And I say to you, mind your business. How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House. This is another influence by Smithy, I believe. I've heard it's devastating, so I'm afraid to pick it up. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This is an Allison Page's influence. This is a book that I started, wasn't vibing with, put it back down. Because you know what? So many people love this book. There's got to be a reason. I wasn't in the right headspace for it. So it goes back on the shelf. No problem. No big deal. It's waiting for me when I'm ready. The Girl with the Laughing Voice by Abby Dare. Another book that I'm anticipating to be mildly devastating just because it involves like a child bride, I'm pretty sure. I keep saying it's on my list. This is my list. What I'm going over is my list. So this is gonna be a winter read for the cover alone. Happiness by Aminata Forna. This is another book that the Storygraph recommended to me. I couldn't tell you what it was about, and my life depended on it. I have no idea. I have no idea the premise or synopsis of that book. But the cover is very wintry, and it shall be read in the wintertime. Okay, shout out to Sally Timms, Each Little Bird That Sings. I started this book and I could tell it was gonna make me sad, so I put it down, because guess what? Wasn't ready for it. A lot of the chemical reaction that happens between you and a book is timing. Timing is the agent. And the timing's gotta be right. And I wanna like the books I read, and so I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to wait. And if I'm not willing to wait, then I probably wasn't gonna like the book that much in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Collection of short stories by David Sedaris, Me Talk Pretty One Day. I don't read a lot of short stories or essays, but I continue to buy them. So hopefully one day I start reading them. Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. Children That Spontaneously Combust. Speaking of Greek mythology, calling back to my Greek mythology thing, I got the first Percy Jackson book for my birthday. Never read them growing up, but I think it'll be a lot of fun reading them as an adult, and hopefully I like the first one so much, I want to read the rest of the series. Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. I heard about this on Glennon Doyle's podcast when she interviewed Jen Hatmaker, and they were talking about codependency. And I was just really like blown away by their conversation, and I could recognize what they were describing in my own life. So my husband and I bought these books and said we were going to read them together, and we haven't yet. The Robber Bride by Margaret Atwood. I thought I really thought this was like a Robin Hood-y story. It's not. It's not at all. I don't even know, like, first of all, power move, just having a picture of Maggie Addy on the back. I have no idea what this book is about. Raise Up Your Red Flag. It's a J.D. Salinger book. I really loved J.D. Salinger in high school. Haven't read him in a long, long time. So I'm holding on to my Salinger for nostalgia, and also because I do want to revisit it with a bit more of a critical eye. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm ever going to read this. Agatha Christie's, it's a Miss Marple collection of stories of Miss Marple, which I guess is like one of her investigator characters. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm probably never going to read this book. Pride and Premeditation. It's a Pride and Prejudice retelling, and it has the most beautiful cover in the whole wide world. Look at that. It's gorgeous. I started this and I didn't like it, but I can't bring myself to get rid of it. Surprised by Joy by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is like a very prolific Christian author. He writes a lot. He wrote The Chronicles of Narnia, which is a series that I love, but he also writes a lot of nonfiction. And this book is about his wife dying and the grief that he encountered as a result. And I would like to read it one day. I really like reading about grief. You tell me. The Energy Bus by John Gordon. My former boss and friend got this for me as well. It's so short, and yet I simply don't want to read it at all. This is a very cool edition of Elephants Can Remember by Agatha Christie. And again, I don't think I'm ever going to read it. I just don't. And then here we have another J.D. Salinger. Raise High the Roof Beams, Carpenters, and Seymour. This is a deep cut. And my friend in high school, Lacey, was obsessed with this. And then I was obsessed with it consequently. And I haven't read it in a really, like I said, it's been a really long time. But I want to. I'm gonna give myself some grace for continuing to say that I want to read these books, even though it is redundant. Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. Another book that I really liked in high school that I want to revisit and see if I still like it or if I just liked it for the sake of liking it. Bodywork by Melissa Febos. It's a book all about, it's like nonfiction, kind of a memoir, but it's also all about personal narrative and like writing your own story. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I've heard this one is like a classic and really, really fun. I'm not in the sci-fi mood right now, but it's waiting for me. I love Anne Lamott. She wrote Bird by Bird, which is one of my favorite books and obviously inspired the name of my Instagram and my booktube. I also really like Traveling Mercies by her, a series of short story collections. And then we have, I've read a couple others, but this one is on my TBR, Hallelujah Anyway. Don't really know a whole lot about it. All of her short stories are like not terribly dissimilar, but I got it in large print, so that's gonna drive me crazy. Thank you, Thrift Books. I got this in an estate sale for $3, so I really couldn't say no. I've heard really good things about Casey McQuiston, and this is like the president's son and the queen's son fall in love. Doesn't that sound fun? I got this for my birthday and I started reading it and I said, this is not a summer book. This is a fall, autumnal, wintry book. And it's kind of dark, but so far it's about this little girl that nobody loves, fun, and she gets taken in by a wax figurine artist. The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. I don't want to talk about how upset I am that I got the US cover and not the UK cover. We can't live in the past. I also have A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. I got a pretty good ways into that. And the content, some of the content in that for me was just too much. It was not good for me to read. And so I put it down. I still own it, and maybe one day it'll be the right read for me. But I am a little more hopeful about this one, especially because I know it's like about stories and there's like a book character. So yeah, I'm hopeful for this one. City of Saints and Madmen by Jeff Vandermeer. I really loved the Southern Reach trilogy, which is the trilogy that has Annihilation in it. And I loved his writing, and that is the only like trilogy that I've read where it's like, I have to read the next book. I have to read the next book. Emma by Jane Austen. Don't really know what it's about. I think it's about a girl that sticks her nose in other people's business. Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. It's a pandemic book. I do want to read The Sea of Tranquility, which is her most recent work, but I know that there are characters from this book and there are characters from The Glass Castle, her other novel, in Sea of Tranquility. So I'm trying to read them in order. So here you go. So these books here are books that I want to read like next. They're like books that I'm prioritizing, that I'm like really keen to read sooner rather than later. This is Dominicana by Angie Cruz. It's a book that I've seen like somewhere, because when I saw it on the shelf, a light bulb went off. I've really been challenged within the past couple weeks to diversify my reading. I think I've said that on this challenge before, but I really am taking it seriously. I want to read diversely and diversify my bookshelf and my reading. And so I'm just trying to be super mindful of the books that I buy, and that has become like very important to me. So when I went to Half Price Books, it is Latinx Heritage Month, and so I wanted to pick up some Latinx authors. And yeah, it's just been really enriching already. Like, the more mindful I am about the kind of books that I'm like, the books I'm picking up, it's just been really enriching for me, and it's like really changed my perspective. So I got Dominicana by Angie Cruz. I believe it's like a coming of age story. Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri. I really have been interested in reading Jhumpa Lahiri for quite a while. This is a collection of short stories, so it's a little shorter, but I thought it would be a good introduction because this is, for me, I think the title from her that I see most often, probably because it won the Pulitzer Prize. Next, Infinite Country by Patricia, did I say that right? Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. I think this got shortlisted for something. It might have been the Women's Prize, but I've heard that this is beautiful and devastating, and those two words, sign me up. Yes, please. Okay, this one is well loved and well hyped, and I've heard it's for very good reason. Legendborn by Tracy Dion. I don't really like YA anymore, but everybody loves this book. I just had to pick it up. They had it in paperback at Half Price Books. I couldn't say no. The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. I read Love Medicine by Louise Erdrich in high school. It was like required reading, but I want to read more from her and hopefully discover other like Indigenous authors. And this book is about a bookstore and a ghost. And so I think this is on my fall TBR. I think it's gonna be like a perfect cozy read. Beloved by Toni Morrison. I just finished reading Mexican Gothic, and it was kind of the first like Gothic book that I've read in the Gothic genre. And this also falls into that category, and it has kind of like a haunted house ghost motif, I guess you would call it. I don't know, but this is on my fall TBR. And so I think this is going to be the first Morrison that I read. Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kaur Jaswal. I want to apologize for that pronunciation. Let's just get that right out there. This sounds like a really fun, upbeat, I know this is a hot take. I trust Reese Witherspoon implicitly with my life. And it's about a writing group in London in a Sikh community. And I think it's gonna be fun and heartwarming. And then lastly, we have American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I think this cover is very cool. I don't know what this book is about, but I want to read it. It's a thickie. I also have this impression, since I really liked Good Omens, that I'm really gonna like Neil Gaiman's work. The only other book I've read by him is Coraline. And my husband the other day, he was like, "You're really into Neil Gaiman." I'm like, I'm not. I haven't even read him that much, but I am keen to read so many of his works. So I don't know, we'll see. But that's it. That's my TBR. Let me know if there are any books that you see that you also have in your TBR, or maybe a book that you were introduced to that you're like, oh, I think I'll pick that up. I'm open to a buddy read. If anybody is keen. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. And I appreciate you, and I love you. Bye.